This is actually one of my favorite topics right now. It's all about basically how the new technology that's come about over the past 2 years in response to the pandemic really is here to stay and allow sales teams to really work more effectively and reach a broader range of people than they have previously. So just in terms going through introductions, we'll talk about tools and technologies, and then we'll have Q&A. So I'm sure everyone's a Zoom pro by now, but you can submit your questions through the Q&A box at the bottom, and we'll answer any questions at the end of the session. And then in the slide deck, you'll also have my email. So if you wanted to email any questions over afterwards, you can do that as well. So in terms of introductions, my name is Sara Montalto. I'm the Vice President of Strategic Services at Loving Company, and I've been working in marketing with exclusively senior living communities since 2003. So I just wanted to give an overview today in some of the top technologies that we're seeing that are working for sales and marketing teams and things that we really see staying with us going forward. So we'll go through these one by one, and then at the end of the slide deck, I also have links to all of these technologies so that if you wanted to go and explore them on your own, you'd have that option. So the first really is virtual tours and 3D floor plans. And this is something that has been on the increase prior to the pandemic. And the number of communities that have been investing in these resources at greater levels really has increased over the past 2 years. And also how they use them really has changed. So previously, it was something that was just hosted on your website that somebody didn't really interact with the prospect in that way, or it was an interactive sales board in an office for some communities, primarily startups, versus now that this is something that operational communities are using and making it an interactive experience that maybe sharing a Zoom link like today and being able to jump on that with a prospect and really walk them through different elements of a virtual tour. And the other great thing that does is you get to discover what's really important to the prospect so that when they actually are able to come on campus and tour, what resonated with them from the virtual tour. So what areas should you spend more time with, or what things that they didn't really seem to have much of an interest in. So the clip on the screen is from your tour where they're actually able to, they go out to communities, and when they do a virtual tour of the apartment, it's taking lots of images and stitching those together. And if you see the very faint floor plan at the upper right-hand corner of the screen, that's where you can actually click into the different rooms. And it's something that you could use for a single floor plan. Some communities might have a half dozen or a dozen, depending on size, to focus on, their inventory that's really harder to sell. This next screen is a product called Your Tour, and this is something that's really meant to be always an interactive experience between the salesperson and the prospect, where you're able to click into different areas and you upload your own assets. So any photos and things like that you have. But again, it's that interaction between the salesperson and the prospect. It can be done virtually. It can be done as a home visit by taking out an iPod, or it can even be the start of a community appointment, or even the end, to really see how those different areas on campus really connect with each other. And then the image in the background is an interactive campus map version that if a community wanted to have that on their website. So it's a more simplistic version of what would be a guided experience with a salesperson. Another area is video email. And everybody knows that's in a sales position, the difficulty in trying to get somebody on the phone these days, that so few of calls are answered unless somebody knows your number and is expecting that call. So this is a way to deepen the connection by email to really start personalizing that relationship, having a deeper connection, because when you can see the person that's giving you the message, you understand that there's more of a person behind it. And it also allows you to both show and tell. So in either a traditional voicemail or an email, you're just really telling them, versus if somebody were to come in for a tour and there was something that they'd mentioned and there was an area of your community that you thought it might be helpful to highlight again, you could do that with a video email. The other thing that you could do with this type of thing is create assets that you're using in other places when they're not done for a specific prospect in question. So I know I'm going fast because we have a short time period. So like I said, I will take questions at the end, and you can email me questions afterwards. So then this is my sort of last slide on different types of technologies, but the webinar. And I really like to think of webinars as virtual sales events and going into it with that mindset. So I thought it was more important to tell you less about how a webinar works or highlight a particular platform, but share some lessons learned that Love & Company has experienced with our clients over the past 2 years. And the big one is that we've done some analysis on who's been RSVPing for webinars, and that we've noticed that it is a much broader geographic area for our lead base than who would typically come to an in-person event. So this means there's this group of prospects out there that we've known about for years that we now have a platform that they're more willing to engage with than ever before. So while yes, absolutely, when it's allowed, getting back to in-person events is critical to the sales process, but also maintaining some level of virtual sales events will allow you to connect with prospects that are more distant geographically, but also those who may not be comfortable coming into the community yet, or maybe even your digital leads that still want to maintain that distance but learn more. Overall, more factual educational topics perform better than fun social events. That it seems that people, if they're looking for a fun social event, they want to do that more with friends and family than with the senior living community if it's a virtual experience. So educational topics, and maybe not even 100% focused on your community itself, broader topics of interest to seniors who are exploring a retirement community. Of course, a best practice is the event should be recorded and emailed out to everyone afterwards, including those who didn't attend. In terms of success rates, that getting RSVPs when you match the invitation with the platform, it works best, which means if you're doing a direct mail campaign, it's hard to get the same response to a webinar as what you get for an in-person event. So they either perform best with your lead base, where you have an email address where they can click the link, or if you are sending a direct mailer to your purchase list, having a QR code that goes right to that registration page so that they're able to sign up right from their phone really gives the best response rate. So in a lot of ways, I see the slide right in front of us as the most important takeaway for today, because this is really about how do teams learn and adapt to new technologies? As I said, we don't see this as something that's going away. And like any new tools and technologies, it's really investing the time in learning about it, in training for it, and giving yourself grace in knowing that it's going to be uncomfortable and that you're not going to get it perfect the first time. And you really need to plan for sort of an onboarding or integration period where you're brainstorming with your team and role playing, then actually practicing with prospects for a couple weeks and coming back together as a group with your team so that you can make that more comfortable, and knowing that you need to repeat this process a few times to really get a comfort level with it, and then also not feel like you can't go back to the company and request additional training or look for other resources or colleagues at other communities to really talk to and learn how they're using these tools successfully. That these are tools that if you're not using them, chances are your competition is, and it's giving them more avenues to connect with prospects going forward. So becoming comfortable with this is going to be really important. So just in closing, the biggest takeaway is the technology isn't going away, but over time, you can become as comfortable using these new tools than as you were when you learned how to do your jobs as they were currently. That it's developing what your best practices are for how you integrate them, how they work best with your market. The other thing, even with all these tools, it's really the guide that senior living's a relationship-based sales process. I'm telling you something you already know, but it's really how can these tools support you in being that guide as you're working with seniors and their families, how you're able to maintain that connection either when they live further away and aren't able to make it into the office as quickly as they want to meet with you, or if they have something going on in their life and can't come in right now, or if they're still just not feeling safe, depending on what COVID levels are. And then the final takeaway is that it's possible to be both virtual and digital and retain what it means to be human, to still have that personal connection with your prospects and really build and develop the relationship. And that's why, even if it's an iPhone on FaceTime, if that's the technology your prospect's more comfortable with, but being able to be face to face before you can meet in person just allows you to really start cultivating that relationship sooner. All right, so I'm going to leave it on the screen for the links to resources. You'll have this afterwards. And then I actually, Sarah, did we have any questions for this morning?